Citations, my friends, and thank you for tuning in to another edition of Factions of Freedom. I have titled this one Chaos in the Police State because we're going to be looking at a number of things which suggest simply that not only are the cops here in America having a hard time handling all the different types of things that are going on, but how also outside forces such as George Soros has pushed for federalization of the police, and subsequently what that means for the transformation of what's going on here in America. So with that being said, let's jump right into it. So for the people that will be watching, you guys will be seeing a number of videos that illustrate the point that I'm trying to get across to you guys. I'm not sure if you remember, but a few months back we had the whole incident with Lavoy Finicum and the Bundy Ranch situation. Things like Pete Santilli, Ted Bundy, I forget all the other Bundy members' names, but how eventually, one by one, people started falling away. And then we found out later on that basically that people were there because they didn't want to pay their debts, or that money had been owed. So basically how Lavoy Finicum lost his life was over a number of miscommunications. And then whenever you take into consideration how they handle the whole situation and everything subsequently, you have to really understand that these are the times we're in. That people, patriots, people who are trying to stand up for the Constitution, stand up for, what's legal, lawful, and good, we're being somewhat chastised. And while it might not seem like much on the surface, that's all part of a plan. What we have to understand as well is that more of these things are going to come. More of these types of patriotic stances, patriotic movements, organizations, these home fronts, they're going to come out more to try to basically say, hey, what happened to you guys holding up your oath? What happened to you guys, being American, being patriotic, being the same thing that we are. It was at the start of the year. I remember, right around January, towards the end of February, Robert Lavoy Finicum was murdered by the feds, and that's actually what you guys are seeing there. How the FBI had doctored some of the films, but what you guys are seeing is the full footage. Basically, what's happening is after Lavoy had crashed the car into the mound, he got out, and they allegedly said that he brandished his pistol. However, from the footage that you can see on the inside, you can tell that he did not brandish his pistol. He put out his hands basically to surrender, and they shot him. And they shot him. And these, like I said, these things are starting to happen more and more. We let in the year with this. Remember that now, guys. We let in the year with Lavoy Finicum being murdered, with the whole Liberty Revolution, with the whole Bundy Ranch situation. Now, and I'll get back to the Lavoy Finicum situation, the Bundy Ranch situation, but now we have things such as the Dakota Access Pipeline. We have people, eco-defenders, water protectors, environmentalists, so to speak, people who are standing up for basically the rights of the earth, Native Americans who didn't want their land taken from them again in the simple, normal way that the white man does. And I'm not being racist, I'm just saying, historically, this is what has happened. Historically, this has been the motto. This is why Native Americans have reservations in their own country. You see? But what we have to understand with the Dakota Access Pipeline is we have the mainstream media basically covering it up. Okay? So before, let me preface it this way. Before I even get into the Dakota Access Pipeline, the Sabile Trail, the Bundy Ranch, all of that nonsense, and I'm gonna correlate it as well to the current day events that are happening. How we just had a terror attack in Manhattan and then in New Jersey within a 48 period of time, and how this connects to France, to Venezuela, to all of the other things that are going on. Because people, as you can see right here, protesters are rising up in the millions against the ruling class, while in Venezuela they're crushing 2,000 guns in public. Okay, what does this mean for America? This means what we're witnessing right now with these terror attacks, with these different types of events occurring. This is destabilization. As I said before, we led in the year with Obama talking gun control. He has tried to tote that all throughout the year. Right there, 52,000 guns sold a day under Obama. It's because of the times that we are in. It is because of the massive destabilization that we are witnessing. And it's not just local, it's international. So how is this chaos in the police state? They're trying to clamp in on the freedoms that we have. They're trying to stop us from being able to protest. They want to be able to subdue us right there with chemtrails, or predict us with high-tech crime and pre-crime centers. In this police state, in this time frame that we're in, as General Mark Milley has said it, we're going to be dealing with terrorists, hybrid armies, and a number of other things. And I feel like we're starting to see this. This destabilization is global, courtesy of, if you would like a face, courtesy of George Soros. And he's talked about it. He's actually championed it for quite some time. What we have to realize as well is with this kind of information, with this understanding, and with this knowledge, this is why they're pushing for a civil war. This is why they're pushing for a gun control. There's so many different factors that come in to play with this, right? There's so many different things and different angles that we have to interpret when we understand, or when we're trying to understand, the police state. A very simple way to look at it is if we look at France, how with Francois Hollande, how he has said we have to get used to these terror attacks and how more of them will occur. Obama himself has even said that more of them will occur. I'd initially intended to do this video simply on the Dakota Access Pipeline and how there were mass arrests and Facebook censoring everything. But in the time of waiting to put this video together, so much information, and that's what's crazy, so much information came out. You know, we have Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia declaring states of emergency because of a busted pipeline. Riot police being called on actual eco-defenders, on the environmentalists, to be taken. Because right now, these people consider us more valuable as workers. They see us as being more valuable in a state of subservience, of blind ignorance, so to speak, to where they can capture or harness any worthful or usefulness that we'll have. And I know I'm kind of throwing out a lot to you guys, but what we have to do when we're breaking this down is truly look at the angles in which these people are trying to come at us. By demoralizing us, by bringing us down to this subservience, to where these people, the riot police, where they'll encroach on you, that's their solution. When they say for peace and security, it basically means to abdicate yourself of any rights to actual freedom that you would have. I think it was George Orwell that said, picture the human face and then with a boot stomping on it. And this is the future that they want. It was either George Orwell or Aldous Huxley. I'm not entirely sure at this moment. The point I'm trying to make is that within this chaos, they're trying to erect an even deeper version of the police state. Whenever I first started doing all of this whenever I first started making videos and kind of, getting myself out there, kind of getting over the fear of saying, hey, someone needs to speak out about this. I started making videos whenever the Ferguson situation was really big. Whenever Ferguson was just starting back in 2014. You guys can actually go back and check out my first video, Ferguson Peaceful Protests Turned Hostile. Why am I talking about Ferguson? Well, with the hyper-militarization, right, where they got all kinds of different equipment from the feds, where they got the MRAPs, they got riot gear, they got drones, they also received ARs, they received a number of different pieces of equipment, basically, subsequently gear that was passed down from the war, or the ongoing war, and then given to us to police us here in America. Why am I talking about the hyper-militarization of the police state? But we have to realize that 2 years later, where we have terror attacks that are occurring roughly 48 hours or so, or 72 hours, or one at least every week, whether they be false flags, orchestrated, or let loose individuals who are actually radicalized, you see, what we have to realize is now these people have a perfect reason to keep this gear, to keep the operations they have going on, to expanding the technocracy, to expanding the police state, to expanding the surveillance state, and expanding all of the other different measures that they want to have in place to basically usurp us of our natural rights. And that's why when we're looking at the police state, we simply can't look at it these days. We simply can't look at it anymore as just cops who are running rampant with power, you see. And this is why, for the longest time, I haven't really covered the police state, because we're already very, very well aware of how crooked these zebras are, how crooked these police are these days. Right there, police. We were told to allow the Orlando shooter to kill. Right. And I'm going to touch on this real quick because this is a perfect example of what's going on right now with the Facebook safety check, right? So whenever the Orlando shooter, because I feel like that was a whole false flag, I don't have time to go into it, but I do have a video later on where we look into it. It's called The Free Stream America's Pulse. You can also go back and listen to the episode that me and Lori did on it. With that, there is so much evidence that points towards it being an actual false flag. What I would consider another agenda advancing scenario. What they used it for, in one aspect that I was able to notice, what they used it for is for that safety check, is for whenever they notify you that certain individuals in the area that you're friends with on Facebook are safe. Now, well, I know, like I said, that might not seem like much, but what that basically says is it logs you somewhere in digitally saying that you are safe, that you are not dead, that your vitals, that your pulse, that you're active and alive. And this is being sent out to all of your friends regardless of the situation you're in. When we break that down, we have to realize I would consider it invasive, simply because of the way that we're looking at, like I said, this information, understanding that this is a technotronic, authoritarian, super surveillance state. So earlier today, with the Ahmed Khan Rameh, and I'm sure I pronounced that wrong, the terrorist attack in New York City, air quotes. And I say air quotes simply because they already found the suspect, you see. So with Ahmed Khan, they put out wanted alerts to all the people in New York, kind of like a bounty. And this was the first time that they had ever done this. And it wasn't an Amber Alert saying, hey, check out these people, right? It wasn't so much that. It was them putting out a wanted poster, a 28-year-old male, And then you had to see the pic that it got sent out with, and it was saying call 911 if you saw it. I mean, I know we see this all the time on television. We see this all the time on the news, on the internet, this, that, and the third, at Walmart, all these other places. But to have it debut itself in modern day technology shows you, as I said before, the times that we're in. The safety check, the fact that the technocracy is able to be aware of your current situation. So I'm sure you're wondering, well, what is this technocracy that I'm talking about? I'll put it to you this way. In places like Chicago, right there, they're putting in things such as pre-crime, a computer that tells Chicago cops who to arrest and who to shoot. Algorithms that basically gauge your threat score, how dangerous and hostile you are to the world, right? And this is what they would like. This is what they would like to have all of your information, where they're monitoring your Facebook posts, where they're monitoring any kind of indication that you would be a threat to society. This is why whenever I say things like looking at the hyper-militarization of the police, they have this technology now. So could they have actually been able to rightfully arrest the individual, or is this a false flag to again advance another part of an agenda? You see. And I know I'm kind of jumping all over the place, but it's because we have to look at so many different aspects of this police state in the way that it is evolving, so to speak, because it's no longer simply race. I mean, well, to a degree, some of the studies show that whatever they're putting in information into the databases for these pre-crime and high-tech real-time crime tracking centers, some of the information is actually kind of skewed towards black people. So that's a whole nother different discussion. But what we have to realize is now they are stepping up their efforts, as I said before, with monitoring, law enforcement, and other things, basically saying, obey Big Brother. Right there. Denver police will collect racial information on people they contact. So they've done this kind of all over the place. They've done it in Chicago, they've done it in Denver, they've done it in Georgia, they've done it in Florida, and that's just to name a few, right? And what's crazy about it, this is what I'm really trying to illustrate to you guys, is this no longer third-party, corporations or industries or third-party individuals that are doing these types of things, organizations. These are the police. This is the state. These are the jackboots of the state coming to check up on you. Boom, right there. Boston police randomly assign body cams as nobody volunteers. As nobody volunteers. So think about that. Filming everything, that's what they want. And I could talk on that. I will jump back to the technocracy, but to get back to the Dakota Access Pipeline situation, and now the Sabile Trail Pipeline. So with both of these situations, or basically with the Dakota Access Pipeline situation, we have people out there. There are people in Seattle just the other day that were protesting against it. You see. We have people that are setting up, and this is what we have to realize. While it might not seem like we're being victorious, so to speak, we are winning. Like right there, cops refuse to arrest brutal Dakota pipeline mercenaries who illegally used attack dogs on peaceful protesters. We still have some people that uphold themselves to the Constitution. Fantastic. I didn't realize that was so hard. But because we are having an effect, you see, this is why things like that happen. Why the Dakota pipeline erupts into a bloody violence, pit bulls, attack dogs, pepper sprays, and all kinds of other things being used on the protesters. It's because all around the world, or at least all around here in America, they're trying to have a war or provoke a war against civilians. They're trying to make it so that we seem like we are the aggressors. The simple thing that the Native Americans said with the actual pipeline is they just didn't want it laid on their land, which I'm sure would be springboarded as a way to further the reach of whichever corporation owned the Dakota Access Pipeline. And I will be doing a subsequent video on all the things that have developed in regards to it. But what I would like to say is that while we're having this fantastic effect, while we're seeing the true birth of alternative news, conscious media, and the death of mainstream media, what we're seeing happen really is how we're coming together against the system. And how they're trying to, as I've said before, step up their efforts and shun us from succeeding, to stunt our growth, to impede on the progress that we could have. You see. And all of this, if you know me, all of this can be traced back to the idea of the Agenda 2030, the idea that they're going to be using this as a pretext to talk about all kinds of different things, such as maintaining the environment, trying to keep things up, trying to put nature first. And I know all of this sounds wild, but we've got to understand the time that we're in. So I'll put it to you this way. Right there, while riot police are beginning massive arrests at the Dakota Access Pipeline, Facebook is censoring these videos. They're censoring what we can do. They're censoring the word, they're censoring the message, and they're censoring how we're coming together. And while all of this is happening, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers has finally okayed the permits for the Sabile Trail, a pipeline that traverses through environmentally sensitive parts of north central Florida. The U.S. Environmental Protection Agency has estimated that some 1,200 acres would be destroyed or impacted during construction. Later, the agency will change the projection to less than 900 acres. Then the APA changed their minds again and dropped significant environmental concerns over the project that included whether the potential for sinkholes and damage to the aquifer had been downplayed by the Sabile Trail and the Federal Energy Regulatory Commission. In some cases, the EPA claimed impacts to wetlands are considered temporary, and by temporary meaning, it could only be 50 years to revegetate. The complete Sabile Trail project will be a $3.2 billion 516 mile with a 3-foot wide pipeline that will move around 1.1 billion cubic feet of natural gas daily from Alabama through South Georgia and Florida. I think that's ironic because while these people are talking about building this new pipeline, right? The Sabile Trail pipeline, the one that starts here in North Florida. And I have an esoteric or occult theory on that as well. The fact that they're trying to bleed the country dry, so to speak, to harvest all of our oil. I mean, we can sit here and talk about alternative energies for days, but whenever we're discussing things like the Trans-Pacific Partnership, the TTIP, Agenda 2030, and all the other things that are happening on a global scale, we have to really realize what these people are doing. The idea that we're having to fight for a pipeline could be symbolic for the fact that we're trying to hold on to some semblance of our own nation while these things are all happening here on a global scale. But to get back to point, while they're talking about different parts of the Sabile Trail pipeline, the 3.2 billion 516 mile with 3-foot wide pipeline that stretches from Alabama to South Georgia and Florida, well, I think it would be emblematic, or at least ironic, to talk about how, at the same time, Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia declare states of emergency as gas shortages loom after the pipeline leak. And I'm sure you're asking, well, what does that mean? Well, as Native Americans face arrest, or Native American protesters face arrest in North Dakota for blocking the construction of the Dakota Access Line pipeline. Sorry, guys. The anti-media's Gary Weldler reports a gasoline pipeline spill currently unfolding in the South. Apparently, I've got mush mouth for days. The leak has prompted Alabama Governor Robert Bentley, Tennessee Governor Bill Haslam, and Georgia Governor Nathan Deal to declare states of emergency. The Colonial Pipeline, which runs from Houston to New York, began leaking on September 9th, spilling, and get this, 250,000 gallons of gasoline, or 60,000 barrels. 250,000 gallons of gasoline. The pipeline was built in 1962, and the current leak in Helena, Alabama, is the largest one Colonial Pipeline has experienced in 20 years. Coincidence? I think not. I definitely don't think these days any of these things happen because of coincidence. It just so happened that another pipeline spilled while we have the entire world focused on this. You don't think that they'll try to use this as some kind of way to springboard into the actual Dakota pipeline construction, to use this as the way that they can cherry pick off of the situation, you see? Because while both of these pipelines are happening, and I don't mean to sound racist or to kind of fall away over here on a trend, but with these pipelines, with the Native Americans, with the people that are standing up to fight against them, you see, how do you explain the fact that the Native American genocide is the one least talked about genocide while we're here operating on their land? How do you explain the years of oppression that these people have faced? And then when things like this occur, while we're fighting for the averted construction or the diverted construction of a pipeline, another one leaks, and we're not even talking about the Animas River spill. You see, what I'm trying to illustrate to you guys here is we are living in a country that is falling, that is suffering attack from a global force. You don't think that they would have some tricky, shady things coming up their sleeve? So let me read this to you guys real quick. And this is from Countercurrent News, and it was the day after September 11th. In a historic settlement, Native American tribes have been awarded nearly $1 billion. The U.S. Department of Justice announced this week that the settlement reached with 645 Native American tribes for the sum of $940 million. The settlement stems from a 1990 lawsuit which claimed the U.S. government failed to pay its portion of federal contracts for housing, education, law enforcement, and health care, as well as a number of other support programs. When the federal government failed to meet its obligations, people on the tribal lands were decimated by suffering, according to tribal leaders. Quote, "The federal government's conduct was not just cruel and wrong, it was illegal," said Governor Val Pante. Senior of the Zini Pueblo tribal leaders believe the massive payout to compensate the tribes will assist in combating major issues faced on the reservation, such as alcoholism, rampant unemployment, and almost non-existent healthcare system. So whenever, I went back to look at what people thought about this actual article, because of the time frame that it was in, I got a lot of thoughts such as, is this hush money? Is this hush money for what's going on with the Dakota Access Pipeline? Are these Native Americans just being paid to take this money? At this point in time, who really knows? At this point in time, who can really say? Because these people will do anything. And that's why I wanted to speed by those three, what I would consider coincidental events. The idea that they'll pay hush money to other Native Americans to hopefully reach out to more Native Americans to tell them not to do these things. That they'll also have more of a oil leak, or so to speak, another spill on the other side of the country. No, I wouldn't put it past these people at all. So it's from one action that they've created a number of others. I, for one, feel honored. The fact that because we're having such a direct effect on these people, on these aggressors, on these people that want to wish us ill will, because we're pushing so hard and we're having such great triumphs against these individuals. They're trying every different way to try to take our rights. Right there, Turkey suspends human rights as Erdogan jockeys to become the supreme dictator. You guys don't think it was funny that they had that failed coup right after Erdogan, right before Erdogan became commander-in-chief? When we already know that they're trying to push for the same thing here in America? That they're trying to push for all of this destabilization to somehow give Obama a third term. You see? So there's so many different things, as I keep saying, that we have to look at when we look at what this chaos is here in the police state. Right there, UK police will soon start bagging people's heads during arrests. These people, at this point in time, I'll put it, let me see if I can explain it to you this way. We are forever trying to get more followers, more subscribers, more likes, more numbers. These people see us as just that, numbers. They don't see us as humans. And this is why we have to take a step back and truly analyze the situation that we found ourselves in. It is through this progressive destabilization, this progressive violence, so to speak, that they'll use it. They will find a way to do the whole adage of ordo ab chaos, to create order from this chaos. I mean, just the other day I remember reporting on it. The cop that choked Eric Garner. Yeah. Daniel Panatello, the cop who choked Eric Garner to death in 2014, is making a reported $120,000 per year since he was placed on desk duty. And I'm going to leave it right there. You guys can check that out. It's another article from Countercurrent News. It's September 14th, 2016. $120,000. It's because these cops now, the people now, the mindset now of the system, you see, because basically, you know this will happen, these cops, these people, these crooked zebras, at least, they will use the whole "that was only following orders" adage to get away from this. They will use the whole, we had to just do our job. Is your job arresting American citizens? Apparently so, because we already have an entire generation of cops who will choke you out, who will throw children, who will beat old people, who will taunt the handicapped, who will warrantlessly go into your house, who will take your money from your car, from your phone, who will tap your surveillance. And this is all because they're trying to transition into federalizing the police for a global UN task force. And that's another reason why you got to ask yourself, is this what they were doing for the hypermilitarization? Is this what happens whenever our country, our nation, falls underneath all these other global treaties just like everyone else? You see, the unfortunate truth is I think we're starting to see just that. So for the people that are watching, or for the people that are listening, right now we actually have the free stream of America's Pulse, where I basically go over the facts of the Orlando Pulse attack, the Orlando shooting, and how fishy that was. And what we have to look at as well with all of this information. Again, look, we've spent $1 trillion on the U.S. police state since 9/11. If they hated our freedom, they must love us now. What have we done since 9/11? It takes $20,000 to settle in every refugee. One in 5 refugees, 20% of the refugees are settled in New York City. Okay. We already understand that we have ISIS on our border near Texas. We already understand that we have ISIS here in America, that we've been infiltrated, that they are in places like America, or like in New York City, or in California. Right there, America's churches are now installing armed guards to protect against Islamic terror attacks. We are living in a time to where people can't even tell what is right. Sure, does it make us seem racist that we have to isolate this particular group of people? Does it make us seem fearful to want to take care of ourselves instead of trying to take care of others? There's so many different things that come with that, and I'm not trying to get into a philosophical debate. What I am trying to understand here, or at least get across to you guys with this, is every time they have these different attacks, they're trying to demoralize us and distract us. They pushed for a civil war this summer. They've been stoking the fires all year. They've been trying to double down on all of their efforts. And I say this because, well, Obama wants to bring in 200,000 more Syrian refugees into the country. More. While simultaneously usurping congressional authority and banning the sale of assault weapons. How much more evidence do you need that we have been infiltrated? How much more evidence do you need that the current administration does not have your best intentions at heart? This police state, these people that are running amok, these crooked cops, these false flags, these operations, these staged events, all these different things that are going on, is to try to put us into a box, into a state of fear, to where we've given up our rights because we don't feel like we could adequately protect ourselves, and that we need the government, or more of these authoritarian cops of the police state, to conduct these operations. Right there, 2 perfect articles. New York City deploys 500 more officers for precaution after the massacre, and UN demands a bigger, stronger UN police force. They want jackboots on the street. They want people and scared. They want them intimidated. for any kind of thing that you'll do. And it doesn't matter, because these people, they're working for a different cause. They're working for a hijacked country, so to speak. You notice how they don't talk about where does all the gear go? What kind of things have they been practicing? No information is necessarily being leaked. We have Nancy Pelosi coming out saying she wants gun control. Hillary Clinton saying she can't wait to get her hands on our kids. DARPA announcing the aerial Dragnet urban drone monitoring program. And Maryland, not even in California anymore, Maryland banning thousands of students who don't have the government mandated vaccinations. IEDs going off in Manhattan. Gas leaks happening in Alabama, Tennessee, and Georgia. Devices exploding in New Jersey. And Obama saying that everything is okay. Body cams being put on cops, even though they don't ask for it. And that's why I think at some point the cops have to realize that they've been hijacked too. That they've been sold out. That there's a larger agenda going on here. One that ends with us having our rights usurped. You know, I don't try to spend a lot of time on how corrupt these cops are these days, how strange things are these days. But whenever we have cops killing children, trying to take a catheter to you, people being killed, falsely arrested, trumped up charges being made, and a number of all kinds of other things going on. Right there, the CDC even being given powers to detain people en masse for any reason. That's because they're trying to clamp down on what little freedoms we have, and people are resisting. They can feel that something is wrong. They can tell that something is sick inside society. And it's not just racism. It's not just Donald Trump. It's not just Hillary Clinton. It's that we're living in a time frame where wanted alerts are being handed out onto your phone. Your Facebook friends will be notified whether or not you're safe, whether or not you'll know you're safe. We have Obama entertaining the idea of a third term. That if Hillary's too sick to run against Donald Trump, well, all else fails, he might have to become our president once more. We have Facebook. Right there, former Facebook news curator admits they were told to block conservative news stories. This is supposed to be the free and open media that they've provided, right? And look at the response. While in France, protesters are rising up. France, Venezuela, and Caracas specifically. It's because people are waking up to the injustices of a very, very wicked society, and they're trying to, with every ounce of their being, to hold on to the power that they have. And this is why they're ramping up their efforts, as I said before. Things like the Chicago pre-crime, the real-time crime center, the high-tech crime centers. It's because people are done. People are aware right there the establishment will use these tragedies to divide us. People don't want a race war. But that's all we're experiencing right now. This race war. Let me put a pause on this real quick. This race war will be a pretext to a civil war and then a global war. They're trying to, and you can see it, they're trying to drag us into this chaos. They're trying to get us to a point, like I said before, a point of subservience. And what's even crazier is while all these things are going on, these bombings, this destabilization in our own country, Obama's not even discussing it. He said that the FBI is investigating the Minnesota incident as an act of potential terrorism, going on to say that we will direct the full resources from the federal government to make sure that the investigation goes forward aggressively, and that he's monitoring the situation closely, and we will continue to lead the global coalition on the fight to destroy ISIL. It's very hard to believe this man whenever we already know that he's responsible for the ISIS. You see, as I said before, I'm sure even in this video that you guys are seeing in front of you, ISIS is a construction of Obama. People being left over. They need to use ISIS simply for the fact that they can stir up any kind of terrorist attack and then subvert people's freedoms, take people's freedoms off of the chaos that they've created, stirring up and radicalizing these individuals. I'm sure you guys have probably seen the article in the clicker, how the FBI is manufacturing terrorism cases at a larger scale than ever before. And then it goes on to break down how exactly they radicalize individuals, and sometimes they're successful in thwarting their attacks, other times maybe not so much. And by their own figures, that if 1% of, say, 1,000, so 10 of those individuals were radicalized, look at what one individual does. And look at what they do with just one attack. And what I'm bouncing back and forth here, discussing really, is how the American people are being terrorized and these refugees are being given that refuge, asylum. How they're just being able to walk right in. And whenever people like Donald Trump say, hey, maybe we should have this looked at. Maybe we should look at our vetting system. And I'm definitely not saying I endorse Donald Trump or anything of that like. What I'm basically trying to say is that we live in very, very hostile times. And a lot of the things that anyone says can clearly be misinterpreted. And some people will find a way to just do that. They will find a way to misinterpret what you're saying. Ultimately, we all understand what this means. This is globalism. This is the New World Order. This is George Soros's Open Society Foundation, right? Or as John Kerry put it, the borderless world, where we have a culture clash, a clash of civilizations, to where nationalism dies and internationalism becomes mainstream, to where your ideology of what you feel represents you, any culture you have that represents you, any nationality that you would like to hold on to, that's kaputs. That's gone. You better be tolerant here in this New World Order. And this is why they're sending police going door to door, forcing black residents to prove they are really legally allowed to vote. This is why They're putting out all these different things, putting out these different ways to say basically obey Big Brother. These are the new mandates. Right there, John Kerry met with Hollywood studio heads to brainstorm how to fight ISIS propaganda. I'm not necessarily sure there's ISIS propaganda, and I don't think Disney, Universal Studios, Paramount, or any of those people would be able to talk about it. But what they're basically doing is finding a way for us to accept this globalization, finding us a way for us to, as I said before, be demoralized, to have no nationality of, or realization of nationality, to simply just be that, a part of this international global society that just lets all these types of things happen, to where it's like the EU. Everyone's a member state, but somewhere else, someone who has no idea of your ideologies, the things you would like, they're making the decisions for you. And you better like it, because if you protest any of these Muslims, you're clearly a racist. If you protest any of the terrorism, clearly you're racist. If you protest, well, the abuse that cops deliver to people on a regular basis, you're racist. This has become the new term for conspiracy theorists. They just don't want you to think. They just don't want you to speak out. This is why censorship is going into play. This is why we have cops killing children. This is why things are so tense. And to a degree, as I've said before, I'm not trying to bash the cops or anything like that. I'm saying the crooked ones, the ones that know they're doing the bad things. I understand we live in very, very tumultuous times, very, very strange times. But you can be like those cops that refused to do an illegal order. It might get you some blowback, I understand that, but what's the price of your soul? And I'm actually, you know what, I'm sure cops do debate that a lot, whether or not certain things are worth their time. I really do. I'm not trying to, like I said, bash cops. I understand they have a hard job. But as the times go on, as things get stranger and more wild, people that are in these positions of power are only going to become stronger. Right there, the feds regulate homeless shelters while Nancy Pelosi claims the federal research invented smartphones. And for people that are listening, what we're having right now in the center video is the Christopher Murphy talk about the ISIS War Powers Act and how it will give Obama unilateral access to basically establish martial law in any region he sees fit. Right there, Obama pushes agenda to federalize local law enforcement in wake of attack on police. And this is because he wants to federalize the police. George Soros has even admitted that his next plan is to try to federalize the police. The UN wants a global, a larger task force, a larger operating field. Right there, leaked memo reveals Soros plans for federally controlled police. This is why we see them responding to all these different things that are going on. This is why we see changes happening. There's just so many different ways to keep breaking this down. You see. Right there, well, FEMA activates its entire civilian corps. Something big is coming. And this is back in June, earlier this year. So maybe they work in conjunction with the CDC, detaining people. Maybe they work in conjunction with some of these people that they're kidnapping from the Dakota Access Pipeline. You see. To summarize it for you guys, our country is underneath attack. and we're basically being enforced, wedged into a spot to where we're told to take it. And all they can really do is deny that it's even going on. I mean, the fact that they won't even carry the story of the Dakota Access Pipeline, but I'm sure they'll carry the states of emergencies declared by 3 different states. You see. So there's a number of things, guys, that we have to pay attention to, or at least have on lock when we look at the chaos that is in the police state. The fact that we have an authoritarian government who could, I don't even know if you would call it authoritarian, a lackadaisical, absent-minded, clever, and extraordinarily cheeky government who, with the swift of a pen, has brought a great nation down to its knees. While we're thinking of violent opposition, violent revolution, tearing the system down, this is exactly what they want. If we want to see the real change, we have to change how we're interacting with the situation. This is why revolution and renaissance should go hand in hand. But they think renaissance or revolution and violence, that's the only way. This is their way, actually, to have change through violence. And that's exactly what is happening. This is why France is deploying 3,000 reserves and trained school authorities for the new school year. This is why they also gave school teachers emergency bracelets in case of terror attacks and things of those natures. And how they're now starting to create housing places for 12,000 migrants. As I said before, Francois Hollande has already said we have got to get used to these terror attacks. This is a global agenda, as I've tried to illustrate in so many different ways before, that they're using this destabilization to bring forth a demoralized, denationalized way of thinking, a lifestyle to where people care more of others than themselves. And I understand, I really do understand compassion. However, as I said before, this is forced compassion. And they will use all of these different incidences to advance the agendas. This is the immigration invasion, the culture clash, the clash of civilizations, the multicultural agenda. This is how, as I've said before, they will use these swaths of migrants to bring down the West, to bring us down to a third world nation. What do you think that's going to do economically? I mean, we're already crippling as a country. Just the other day, or earlier today, I put up how China is dealing with its own full-blown banking crisis. What do you think bringing in 200,000 different refugees is going to do next year? Because he's already succeeded in bringing in his 10,000. What do you think bringing in 200,000 is going to do? You see? How much more of a perfect example if you want a vision of the future, imagine a boot stomping on the human face forever. George Orwell. And then, as you guys can see, for the people that are listening, it takes 2 cops to handle this one individual, this one lady. And that's emblematic of what's going on. These people are so on edge, so trigger happy, so, I wouldn't even say go get them. So violent, basically, that they're willing to do whatever it takes. This could be bad, this could be good. I guess we'll see in the coming years, because as you can tell, from 2014, from Ferguson, up until now, it has been a drastic change. And this is all for an even larger agenda as well. I mean, they're already implementing things, like I said, from the technocracy, the real-time crime tracking, pre-crime, drones, using your threat score rating, watching what you post on social media. You see right there, federal government can hack into anyone's personal computers, phones, whenever it wants. Is because they're trying to get into a mindset to where if we don't toe the company line that they provide, that they will invade us. That ultimately these people, Big Brother, have the final say, and that's what they would like to think. They would like to put us in a state to where we are subservient. Unfortunately, we cannot oblige them. Unfortunately, I will not oblige them. But that's all I really got for you guys. If you have any questions, feel free to email me. I'll have it in the description bar below. And as always, guys, stay vigilant, expose lies, and share truth. This is Noise Era, Freedom Faction, out.